Hello, good morning, folks, and welcome to another great edition of Money Truth Moments with our very own money expert, our very own money whisperer, Judy Kopenbarger. How are you, Judy?
Good morning. I am really well, doing great, enjoying the sunshine. It was streaming in the windows this morning. It's beautiful weather. We had a little rain yesterday and now it's just gorgeous. So I am one happy girl. How are you doing, Carlos?
I'm doing fantastic. And you know, it must be contagious because I can see your background looks very serene, nice and sunny, and it's just like that's the perfect picture. So
It does
great way to
get
get
nice out
started.
there.
Yeah, totally. So, folks, if you're just joining us for the first time, welcome to the show. If you're not following Judy, please do so at judykopenbarger.today. Today, we're going to be kind of reviewing a little bit about the B word, which is the budget word that we kind of covered last week, too. We're going to add a part two because there were some additional questions that we didn't get a chance to answer for you folks last week. So make sure you share this stream, talk to your friends about it because everybody can use a little bit of budgeting magic, right? So what do you say we get started?
I'm ready. Let's do it. Yeah.
Let's
Which,
start with maybe just reviewing a little bit of what you talked about last week for folks to catch up.
of course. Yeah. I was going to say, by way of review, tune in to some of the past podcasts that we've had on this, the spending plan. We talk about the B word budget, it's what you have to restrict yourself to. Spending plan is a whole bunch more liberating, I think. So, and a lot more fun to think about what you get to use your money for, not what you are forced to use your money for. So some of the concepts that we talked about, I'd love to have you go back and look at those if you haven't, but I would say you need to track your expenses. You want to have your fixed and your flexible expenses kind of set aside because the fixed expenses don't change. You got to have the money for those. Flexible, there's a little more room. And that's going to be things like, how much gas do you put in your car? How much money do you spend eating out or entertainment, clothing, things like that? You got to have some, but you might not need exactly what you're using, right? So those are flexible expenses that give us wiggle room. Another one that I talked about in the last couple of podcasts and the last couple of shows is make sure that you are working on your debt. If you're servicing consumer debt, you have a car payment, you have credit cards that you're paying off over time, make sure that that is a line item on your budget, on your spending plan, because that's something you can control. That's a flexible expense. And you can get rid of that and open up room in your spending plan for other more fun things, right? Like your future and eating out and taking trips and things like that. So we talked about that. We talked about the importance of not only tracking your expenses, but tracking your income. So you can plan for what's coming in and how that income will be allocated. And that's a concept a lot of people don't grow up thinking about, right? Maybe your parents didn't model that for you or you've never had that experience. But it's really, really helpful to do that. And how can you plan without knowing what goes in and what goes out, both parts, right?
All right.
So that is important. And then once you get your spending plan, it's going to be a moving, breathing document. It will change, but it should be minor course corrections. You want to stick to it, commit to it. If you have other people on board with you that help you spend your money and allocate your income, a spouse, your family members, whoever you do money with in life, make sure they're on board and everybody's committed to what you're going to be spending. And then just do that, right? Nike, just do it. So those are some things we've been talking about. What I'd love to do today is really go over mistakes that people make. So you don't have to do that. What do you think?
Yeah, and speaking of which, and I think that's great. It's a great lead into because one of the things that came up are folks wanting to find out what are some of the common budget mistakes that we should be looking out for.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think the big one is you don't have one. You fool yourself and say, "Oh, I kind of stick to it. I kind of do." Well, no, you probably pay your bills on time and that's your fixed bills, but you don't really have a plan for all of that other stuff, the flexible part. But if you really have one, good for you. This is time to take it to the next level. If you don't have one, it will free you up. And that's one of these things, it sounds like it's going to be restrictive. It's going to be a hassle. It's going to be something to add to my to-do list. It's already crazy every day, but it really gives you freedom. It gives you freedom to know that you just have this much parameter. You're almost there. You're there. You're done. It's just so much easier, I think. And it can be simple. It can be an app on your phone. If you're a spreadsheet person, you can do a spreadsheet and go, knock yourself out. It could be on the back of a napkin, or it could be just a little chart on your refrigerator. Mark the X's. It could be the envelope method. Some people do that where they have little buckets or little boxes in their closet, and they put money in there for food, money in there for entertainment, money in there for all these other things. Um,
Mhm.
whatever works for you, it's just allocating the money that comes in for the purpose as it goes out. That's all it is. So you should find a plan that works for you and do it. Biggest mistake is not ever doing that.
So let me follow up with also something, and I know you've seen a lot of these mistakes. You've helped people overcome some of this too. Talk to us about what happens when, for example, in planning, you don't plan for have an emergency fund, because you've always brought that up in buckets as well too.
Yeah, it's going to cost you. So what happens if all of a sudden you have a flat tire, and when you take your tire in to be changed, now you need 2 tires or 4 tires. And while it's
Right.
there, we're doing that right now. It's an expense. If you didn't plan for that and you don't have a cash reserve for that, you don't have an emergency fund or a bank account for what if, right? You're going to end up using a credit card, and now you're going to have debt service. They're going to charge you interest. And if you miss a payment by a day or two, then there's that extra charge, which is very punitive. So it costs you to not be your own bank and have your own reserves. So having an emergency fund is key. And I think if you don't have one, build one. It could be a little at a time, $10 a month, $100 a month, $1,000 a month. Build it up to where it should be. And where it should be, just as a benchmark, it's really the amount that allows you to sleep good at night. But I would say benchmark is a couple, maybe 3 months of basic expenses. We talked about the fixed expenses, survival money, what it takes to keep the doors open at your house. 3 months of that number would probably be a good goal to start, to always have in cash reserves. That doesn't mean it's a savings account that you raid every time you want to do something. When you use it, when you deplete it, you fill it back up and you keep it at that high watermark line. That becomes a real cash reserves. I had a client for many years, older lady. I met her maybe when she was in her 80s, and she made it to her late 90s. And she always says, honey, you know what that account is called? It's called DNT. Do not touch. So you go there for an emergency, but it's not the ATM. You're not going to the wall pulling the money out. So DNT account, cash reserves, always a good idea.
So something else I think that's come up a lot too when people are like, for example, for when they're going to buy a car, right? A lot of folks sometimes don't really take into account what that's really going to look like, right? So,
Mhm.
for example, and I'm going to get to my question here in a moment. So, let's say, for example, you buy a very expensive fast car, a Lamborghini or whatever. People think it's like, okay, cool, I got this and that. But it's not so much how you buy the car, it's also people forget the maintenance. People forget what it's gonna cost. It's not gonna cost like a regular tire to replace something like this, and so people don't think about that. They just think, "Okay, it's a cool car," and then all of a sudden you have all of this extra stuff that comes with it, including insurance, for example, right?
Mhm.
So my question to you is, talk a little bit about estimating costs instead of tracking actual spending, because I think sometimes people get in a lot of trouble when they do that.
Yeah, well, there's a couple parts to that. Estimating a cost. So you say, well, really, I only spend $200 a month on food. Really? You got to track it and find out what you're really spending. I mean, there aren't very many people that can do that. But yeah, the other part is this major expense for like a major purchase. And this is something that I've talked about, I've written about, I've studied and shared over the years. And it was a lesson I learned well from my dad when I was a little girl. And I remember him telling me this, but I've shared it over the years. And when you have a major expense, it could be a house, it could be a car, it could be I don't know, a rental property, any major expense, you're going to really, a boat, something you're going to put a bunch of money into. It's not just the cost of it or the monthly payment of it. there's all these other things that come with it. And I think your fancy sports car is a great example because I mean, you're going to pay to valet that thing. You're not going to just park it in the garage when you go to the mall, right? Or out to dinner. You're going to be paying money to park it special. You're going to be paying a valet to watch it, park it up in the front. You're tipping them. So those are expenses you don't think about. There's going to be gas you put in it, the insurance on those things. I don't know what it is, but it might be equal to your car payment. I don't even know. I don't have a Lamborghini, but you're going to have all these expenses. So the rule of thumb that my dad taught me when I was a little kid, and as a young adult did it and still do it. I'm not a young adult anymore, but I'm still doing it and still believe in the concept. And this is what he said: for every major expense that you have, you better be able to afford 2x that, twice that. If your house payment is 1,500, you better be able to afford 3,000 easily. If it's a 5,000, you better be able to afford 10. Doesn't mean every month you're going to have to double the payment,
Right.
but you want to be able to do that. That'll make sure you never get sideways. There's always money for cash reserves. There's always money to save for the future. There's always emergency money. There's all these things that are going to come up. Of course, with a house, you've got over time, there's going to be a new roof, and now we got to paint, and now there's a crack, and now we have a pipe problem. There's all these things that come up. It can happen with a car too, or any other major purchase. So you want to be able to maintain and service and sustain whatever it is that you are purchasing. And you got to be able to afford that. And I've had so many couples over the years come to me and say, "Oh, I'm ready to want to get the first house. Want to get the." We did. We couldn't wait to own our own home. I want to get it. Want to get it. And so they'll move in a little too quickly, and then within 6 months, they're like, "I hate this place. I can't go out to eat. We can't even order pizza. I didn't know I was going to have to buy a garbage disposal. I didn't know I was going to have to put curtains in and do those Target runs, for all those things. Now that we have a house, there's all these other expenses. Oh, and now the association says we have to take care of the lawn. So we have to do something at some yard work. I didn't plan on spending money on that. So all those things happen. You just want to be prepared. But the rule of thumb is plan on being able to afford twice whatever you think the monthly expense will be for a major purchase. You'll never go wrong if you do that.
That is fantastic advice, and it sounds like your dad was a very wise man. So
Yeah. He was pretty
that's
good with
great.
money. Yeah.
That's really good.
Yeah.
So in having said that, how important is it that we make sure that we don't ignore spending patterns? And what are spending patterns?
Well, the young mom puts the baby in the stroller. She goes to the mall and she feels like, "Oh, I went to the mall and I parked in their parking lot. I used their escalator for free all day long. I used the restrooms. I did all these things at the mall. I feel like I owe them and I better walk out with a bag. I need to make a purchase." Well, you don't. That's a pattern. So if the pattern is every time you leave a store, you have to have a bag or put things in there you didn't plan on purchasing, that's a pattern. So it might be a pattern that's not serving you well. Maybe you can afford it and that's your hobby, right? But if spending is something you're trying to really reel in and get a good concept for, you want to understand these patterns. Another pattern might be, every weekend we want to go out. Friday night, we're going to go out and have tacos or pizza. I guess Tuesday's tacos, Friday's pizza, right?
There you
Is
go.
that how it goes? Wednesday, I don't know what Wednesday is. Burgers. So for people that do that, spending patterns, and this is one thing, eating out and entertainment, and a lot of times they're kind of, together. That's where people spend a lot of money. And I'm in Southern California, and here there's, 500 restaurants within a half a mile of any house, just, a million. And so there's no lack of types of food or access to food or whatever. So it's easy to, if you have a small family, divert to let's just drive through and get a bagel. Let's drive through and get a taco. Let's drive through and get, whatever, a hot dog. So it's easy to do that rather than cooking. But when people actually spend time to prep and they're, bargain shoppers and they're doing the bulk, for a small family, you can save a lot of money. You can feed a family for $1 or $2 for really nice meals per person, as opposed to if you went out, what that would be. And I don't even know, I haven't been to a burger place in a little while, but I'll bet you don't get a burger and fries and a drink for $4 or $5 anymore. I'm guessing it's twice that maybe per person.
It's actually about this was a shock for one of my friends who went to Burger King. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
sorry, not Burger King, Carl's Jr.
Uh-huh.
And it turned out he ended up spending almost $20 on just a burger, fries, and a drink. I mean, everything has gone almost
For one?
3 times for one.
Oh
Yeah,
my goodness.
it's been
Wow.
getting and yeah, that's another show that we can talk about. You know, the
Wow.
economy and some of the different things that are happening, which we probably will definitely put that on the show to talk about. But yeah, that's what folks are experiencing. So it's no longer feasible, like you said, to go out to a restaurant, even fast food. It's become
Mhm.
almost like it very easily for a family of three or 40, $45, almost $50 depending on where you go, you know?
Even for fast food, that's crazy.
Mhm.
So, yeah, and I know what I do a lot of cooking at home. I live on a farm, so a lot of things I don't even have to go buy produce and things like that. We have eggs. I don't know what eggs cost, but I hear people saying, "Oh, they've doubled." I don't know because our chickens do that for us. But it's an area when you're thinking about a spending plan and where can I get some room if it feels tight, where can I, gather some wiggle room? That might be one. Because I see when I see spending plans and help people with this part of their lives, it's the going out, it's the eating out, it's all those habits, all those patterns of spending that are easy to fix. And there can be a lot of joy in preparing, food prepping and preparing at home and shopping. If you have a family, involve them. It's a good skill set to have anyway. And you can have fun with it. You could have culture
Yeah,
nights. So we're going to do Chinese food this time. We're going to do Italian food this time. We're going to learn about what they do in Morocco. We're going to learn about what they do in Malaysia. I just got back from a trip to the South Pacific and they've got amazing food and they don't have Costco out there, right? So everything you see is what they eat. So there's all the fruit and all the nuts in the forest and I call it a food jungle. It's amazing. The fish, so much fish, so much shellfish and aquatic life. That's their diet. And then what they pick, right? It's amazing.
yeah,
So, and they don't spend a lot of money on food. It's just right there. And that's kind of how I live. But it's easy to do that. And it's really interesting. Can be really interesting to enjoy the culture of food while you're saving a whole lot of money. So if you got especially a young family that has an interest in that, or you want them to learn how to be, pretty handy in the kitchen, why not just make that part of your calendar?
yeah. And those are great tips because I think a lot of folks are struggling. I mean, you see things changing, and these are some very, very good tips with that too. So we are at the tail end of our show. So what I like to do now, and folks, if you've been following us, you know what comes up next. It's time for our Money Truth Challenge. What do you got for us today, Judy?
Here's your challenge. If you have a spending plan, take it to the next level. Find out what you can do more, better, different. Write it down, a couple of tips. It's like, I heard something today, or it kind of makes me think about it maybe a different way or from a new perspective. What can we do better to allocate our spending? So it's not all for now because when you have a spending plan, it's now, soon, and later. Those are like the three big buckets. We need money every month to survive and thrive and do our life. We need money for goals that we have coming up soon. Going to replace a car, going to take a trip, I'm going to take a class. And then the future is like down the road. And because we're all living longer, sometimes when you think about that retirement date or that I'm not working full time all the time date, there's a lot of years after that for people. So you want to
Mhm.
plan for that too. So every month in your spending plan, there ought to be some money for now, some money for soon, and some money for later. I would write that down maybe sideways on a piece of paper. And in your spending plan, create what you could do as a goal for money now, soon, and later. Can I take $100 or $1,000 a month from what I spend now, free up a little room, with some of these ideas. Maybe it's eating out, maybe it's, debt service, getting rid of interest payments you don't need. And then allocate that for a goal that I have coming up or for my future and put it into your retirement program. Open an IRA if you don't have one. See what they have at work, a 403B or a 401k. If there's retirement money there that you could start saving, and you can do it without having to pay tax on it right now. And sometimes your company will match that. A lot of times in a 401k, they'll match that. So if you put a couple $100 a month in, so will they for you. why wouldn't you take it? Free money, right? So that's your challenge. What can you do better with your spending plan? If you don't have one, create it. Make sure that it's not too restrictive and it's reasonable. Something that you can manage to start with, and then improve over time. That's your challenge.
All right, folks, you've heard the challenge. If you have any questions, please reach out to us. Also, any other topics that you'd like to hear Judy discuss, let us know as well. And if you're not following Judy, please do so at judykopenbarger.today, where everything is relevant to today's financial world, our financial mess, right? Because we need to figure it out. So, and remember, we're here every Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. with the replays on Thursday at 8 p.m. Until next week, any last parting words, Judy?
Whatever weather you're having where you are, celebrate that. It's all good. Enjoy.
All right, awesome. Until next week, take care, Judy.
Bye-bye.